Hello everybody, I'm Colwin. Welcome back to my workshop. It's live. It's what is it, Tuesday afternoon, isn't it? And it's 4 o'clock. We've got Vicky behind the camera. We've got Mrs. Way behind the camera. Both Finley and Charlie are both at work, working hard. So what we're going to do today is chucks and centres. It's question day for you, really. I think this was led by Chris. You were asking for a chucks and centre day, Chris. So Chris Sullivan. So we are going to do exactly that. We might get to some turning if the questions come up, and you must ask questions, please, guys. Just hang fire just for the beginning, though. Vicky's going to keep up as best she can, but I just want to talk a little bit about chucks and centres, the packages that are out there at the moment, and those sorts of things. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of using that sort of thing. So yeah, just hang on a second. So let's start off with chuck packages. Then we'll move to some chuck jaws, and then we'll start looking at some centres as well. And for reference, I'm going to be talking about, and Lily behind the scenes at Team Axminster, she's going to be putting up the stock codes. But we're listing for my machine, what we refer to as a T38, so a 33 by 3.5 thread. Because that's what my machine is. So just bear in mind for your machine, check your threads, make sure you know what they are before you order anything. You need to know the thread of your machine, and we will look at threads in a moment and explain the differences between the metric and imperial and that sort of thing. Also for your reference, when it comes to talking centres, we'll be talking about 2 Morse taper centres. Now I'll explain to you what Morse taper is again and the degrees in that. But again, that's my machine. You may have a machine that takes a 1 Morse taper or even a 3 Morse taper if you're talking big machines. So I'll explain as we go. So let's look at chuck packages. So there's no disguising the fact that this is a video for Axminster Tools. This is who I work for. This is who I am. I am a tutor for Axminster Tools. So we're going to look at the packages that have just been released by Axminster Tools, so the rebranded packages. And I just want to explain a little bit about these packages, because for a long time, chucks and centres, where we started, for instance, there's my original professional chuck, much loved by basically the majority of the professional turning world. I use those an awful lot. You know that I use those because you see me using those. I'm sure you wince when I use them as well, because that's the internal jaw on that chuck. If we look at, bear with me, if we look at the external version of those same jaws, okay, they're knuckle dusters even more. There is a modern day solution to those, and I'll give you all these part numbers again in a minute. But that was my pro chuck, so I've got a couple of those. We're now working with Evolution, which is the next, as the name suggests, the next in the evolution of chucks at Axminster. Even as an apprentice, I went to Axminster with my boss at the time, and they were heavily involved in the innovation of chuck jaws, what a chuck should be for a wood turner, and this is how things have evolved to what we have nowadays. There's always constant improvements, and that's what the latest packages are all about. I want to talk about those in a moment. It's not just my Axminster head-on, the reason I'm talking so passionately about these, it's my wood turner head-on. Probably the biggest range of jaws that I know of, and the fact that they're all made in Axminster, not just in the UK, they're made right probably about 100 yards from where I teach, where I demonstrate, so it's very, very local to me, and that means I get to see the production, I get a say in design and jaw types and all those sorts of things, so it's really quite precious to me as well, these jaws. It's what I've grown up with over the past sort of 20 odd years of me working with Axminster, so it's I have a definite vested interest in these chucks, and then that's why I like them so much. It's part of what I do. So those were my older chucks. We've got lots of chucks to look at. The Evolution, now you can see the difference in depth between the original Axminster chuck, if I can lift them, they're getting quite lumpy, between the original Axminster chuck and then the one that we're using nowadays. Bearing in mind that, don't look at the jaws, okay, we're looking at the chuck themselves. Very neat little package, that one. That's the SK114. I'll explain about that and the differences between the other sizes as well. So that's the difference. The difference, the main difference now, Vic, if we can just pan into these chucks here. Okay, so what I've got for you, I've got the 80mm chuck, the 100mm, and we've got the 114 that I was just showing you there. They're all stainless steel. They've had a, the chucks themselves haven't had a revamp. The actual branding has changed slightly. They are now Axminster wood turning. Okay, so the evolution isn't quite as pronounced as it used to be. Just because we wanted to get everybody to understand that they are all one big brand. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is 5-year guarantee. This sounds like I'm doing a sales pitch, but it's part of the things that people will look at when they're buying a chuck. If we're talking small lathes, then I would say definitely consider something like the 80mm chuck. So, but the smallest of the benchtop machines. And in terms of a package, that will come ready to go. So you've got the chuck itself with the mounting jaws. Vic, can you come right tight now? Just so we can see right, even tighter, don't need to see me. Let's just look at this one here. So the mounting jaws are the bridge between the jaws. So the profile jaws, in this case we've got a C jaw in the kit, and the actual chuck themselves, they slot on there, and where the register, and then the screws that you got in the packet there, they then attach those jaws to that chuck. Now if you want to, you can keep those jaws on there. You can swap around for different jaws. I'm going to show you the different jaws in a moment. But that's the 80. Nice dinky little chuck, that one, not too heavy. Screw chuck that goes into the C jaws there. Faceplate ring that goes into the C jaws, and obviously the chuck key in there. The packaging on these new packages, it's now completely recyclable. There's no, if that's a word, there's no plastic or anything in there. You've got cardboard packaging throughout, and a cardboard box. Now you can keep that box in the drawer. It can be there for your storage if you want it to be. But if you don't, then when you throw it away, you know and can be confident that that's a recycled piece of cardboard, even though it's very rigid and secure. So I think it's a really nice little addition. We used to have plastic boxes, and the argument was with plastic boxes, yes, I can use them for storage, but at the end of the day, it's a plastic box still. And not everybody did. They threw them away, and we're creating more issues there. So completely recyclable. Let's go up. We'll go up to 100 now. So you may have already guessed that the numbers in the names are the diameters of the chuck. 80mm, 100mm. We're keeping the same things in the set, but obviously things get bigger. C jaws, they're getting bigger than the 80mm. Okay, two different sizes there. Okay, so C jaws, they go on. Once you've got the C jaw on the chuck, you can then pop your screw chuck on the chuck, or you can use your faceplate ring on the chuck. Now you've seen me use faceplate rings, things like my sanding discs on a bowl blank. I don't think I've got anything set up, but on a bowl blank, just means that you can keep the chuck on there. And again, your chuck key down here. Move on up to the 114, the one that I'm using all the time. Okay, 114. C jaws, we're going up in size again. When I talk about going up in size, the actual business part is exactly the same size as the 100, but it's the extra length here. So that gives you, coupled with the extra length of the mounting jaws, just gives you a little bit more stability, gives you a bigger surface area to grip onto, because the expected thing is, with a bigger chuck, you're adding it to a bigger lathe, so you're putting bigger projects on. So that's the reason for it. And again, same thing, screw chuck, faceplate ring included, chuck key down there. Yes, Vicky's got a question.
A question from Dave. Having my AC355 being delivered tomorrow, what is the best size chuck for this lathe?
You have a choice. You're right in there, to be quite honest, with the 355. It will be comfortable using either chuck. My preference would be that one, because the square key for bigger project is just a little bit stronger. It feels more rigid, more secure, that sort of thing. So I would probably go for that one. But to be honest, you know, that if they're so close. In terms of depth, if we look at the depth of the two, you know, weight is certainly lighter for this one. What do you like the look of the most? That 355 can cope with both quite nicely. If it was me choosing, I'd probably go for the 114. But it's entirely up to you. Save some pennies, maybe go for the 100. I know I'm not helping you very much, but if it was me, like I said, I do go for that one if I could afford it. Yes.
Question from Ian. Did I understand that the 100mm drawers will fit on the 114 chuck? They will. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to be aware of here. So if we look at the two chucks, 100, so the size of our mounting jaws is not as long as the ones on the 114. However, they will come out and go into there and vice versa. The other thing to be aware of is they have a little safety dot on the inside. Now, when you swap them around, that dot won't work because you've got a different diameter on here. So you need to be aware of those things firstly. But it's nice, and I do it all the time, to use some of the bigger jaws that are intended for use on the 114 on the 100 and vice versa. Okay, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. We're going to look at the chucks I have and where I've put some 100 jaws on my 114. But no, absolutely, you could take them out. It's these bits which are the important bit, and they're the same size where they count. Yes, Vic. Question from Bill. Do the mounting jaws on all three chucks close to 0?
No, they don't, Bill. No, the mounting jaws close to about 3 mil. Let me get a chuck key and just demonstrate that. Yeah, 3 to 4 mil. But again, I'll show you a solution if you want to hold small drill bits and things like that. The solution would be either the small jaws that I use all the time. How am I there with the shot, Vic?
Just go down a bit more.
You see the centre?
Perfect.
So there, we're about 3 mil, Bill. Okay. The solution, if you wanted to hold small things, would be the jaws you go for. And I'll explain that in a minute. And even if we had jaws that still didn't go down, say you wanted to hold a millimetre drill bit and you wanted to hold it accurately, you could do that in a set of jaws by adding a pin chuck, a little pin vise like that. Now, I made a mistake last week. I had a set of these and I said that they're available. We don't do them anymore, unfortunately, but they are available individually from us, from Axminster. So if you look up pin chuck, you'll see individuals in there. Now that would hold your small drill bits, and in turn, these are designed to be held in chucks, whether it's a pillar drill, whether it's a wood turning chuck, they'll be held in there the same way. So, good. Keep them questions flowing now, guys. It's exactly what we want. Yes, Vic?
Is there very much difference in cost?
Yes. I jumped into that one. Yes, no. There is a bit of difference. I've come prepped with a catalogue. Lily, could you put up the Evolution chuck packages for me, please? The 80, the 100 and the 114. Lily's on it. I'm going to give you catalogue prices. The chuck packages may be slightly different, so don't tell me off. So the old chuck package prices, we're talking for the SK100 about £190, and then if we go to the Evolution on their own, not in a package, because this is the first time we've started doing them in packages, on their own they were 200. Might be slightly different now because we've put them in a package and we've added these. So Lily's going to put those up for us. I have the catalogue to hand, guys, so I will be I can read out numbers, but Lily's on it as well. I've given her a big list of stuff we're going to talk about today. Yes, Vic.
A question from Jim. Does the 114 you have there have reverse locking?
Yes. If it's a T38 we're talking about, so if it's a 33mm by 3.5 we're talking about, Jim, then you need to go for the T38R, which stands for reverse. And basically what that is, let me just grab one and show you. You can pan back up now, Vic, and I can talk to everybody. Let's come away from the chuck packages just for a moment. So, it's alright. You stand still, Vic, I'll move around, because there's a lot of moving around today. Regular T38, okay, so which is 33.3.5. T38 with reverse. So basically what we have there is you've got your reverse function here. So that's more of a conventional reversing facility where you would use your grub screws and bite onto the outside of the register on your lathe. There is another reversing facility inside the chuck, which basically would involve you, if you wanted to secure that chuck for that lathe and you wanted to do really heavy reversing, it will mean some adjustment to your lathe, because what it does is two holes. Where is it? Two holes just inside here with grub screws in. You tighten the chuck on, you then just with a punch dot this surface of the lathe, and then you then create your dimple, your V, and I would do that just with a small drill bit, just this little V, then you lock it on so you can't have any shearing at all going on. That would be the most secure way. A lot of people don't want to start drilling bits in their lathe, so get that 110%. So then that would be the option for you. If you wanted to make it extra secure though, then the only option really is doing those two little dimples in the face, in that area there of the lathe, and then screw in nice and tightly. That would be the most secure way. Yes, Vic?
A question from Lan. What is the reason to letter code the jaws instead of just referring to millimetre size?
Historic. It's a historic thing. Day one, we started with jaw A, B, C. I don't know where E went. We haven't got an E, so I don't know where that's gone to. There were some quirky ones in there. A very old friend of mine, unfortunately, is no longer with us. A guy called Frank Clark. He used to refer to himself as Big Frank. So you'll know Dove BFs, what used to be BFs, are his idea. So hence the BF for Big Frank. So that was one. That always makes me smile. Remembers Frank. That set there is a set or an idea from Mick O'Donnell, Turner out in the Outer Hebrides. So these are the O'Donnells, or shortened now to OD-jaws. Okay. Yes, Vic?
James asks, can you use the SK80 jaws on the SK100 chuck and vice versa? The
SK80, yeah, they will slot in. You're going, the jaws are a lot smaller. And if you want something that's smaller, absolutely, you can swap them around. Back the other way, that 80 chuck is getting a little bit too small, even though they fit. It's a little bit too small, really. You minimise your amount of play that you've got to go with the 100 back, and certainly not the 114s. They will fit, but you'll be limited to your movement, and they will protrude out from the chuck as well. Don't forget. Okay. All right, Vic. Yeah.
A question from Nick. Are all the chucks now named Evolution, and are the Clubman chucks finished?
No. In terms of names, that would be the only things that change. The chucks never, they're all still the same. Nothing's disappeared or anything like that. So we have, they're all known as Evolution chucks, but the 80 and the 100 are also Clubmans. Okay, we're now rebranding to Axminster, the Axminster wood turning range, but you will see in little markings there Evolution. So it is. We're trying to just give a common theme to run throughout. Yeah.
Question from Nicholas. I've got an SK80 and Axminster hobby lathe. Would you recommend updating, Colwin?
Not only if there's something that it's a bigger one that you need. The SK80 works absolutely fine on the hobby machines. The only time I would go bigger is if you found that the jaw range for the 80 just didn't do what you wanted it to. Then maybe go a bit bigger. As soon as you go into the 100 and the SK114, you've got a range of about 30 different jaws. But there's specific ones made for the 80, about 4 or 5 different ones made for the 80, even though they'll take the others, but a specific size to give you that full movement. So no, I wouldn't change it, only if you needed some bigger jaws.
Question from Martin. The old chucks had plates on the back, so the chuck would go on different size lathes. Can you still do this with the Evolution, or would I need different chuck for inch 8 and M33?
Yeah, you will. You need a different chuck. Now, there is a reason, a very valid reason behind that. In making the Evolution chuck, what we wanted to do is make the body and the thread from one solid piece of metal. Okay, and that you ask any engineer, any adjoining face means error can creep in. If we can machine the whole chuck out of one piece of metal, then you're limiting the amount of different surfaces that come in contact, so hence less error can creep in. It does take away the option of being able to have different back plates to suit. That is the one downside of it. So no, you would have to go for a different chuck, or you go for a threaded adapter. I'll be honest, I'm not keen on threaded adapters, because there you've got 4 different surfaces. You've got the male going into the female of the adapter, then you've got the male of the adapter going onto the female of the chuck. You know, that's 4 surfaces that could have error in. And so don't expect massive accuracy when you go to things like that. You might be lucky, but you know, it's not my ideal solution. You're also taking it further away from the lathe as well, so I would unfortunately, one chuck for one lathe. Yes, Vic.
A question from Chris. Could you highlight the way accessory jaws work with the different mounts, as it confused me when I started?
Yes. So so with the different mounts, do you mean just as you attach them to the chuck, or are you? Let's have a look. Let's take one apart and we'll show you. So Vic, yeah, you can come on over. Let's move some of these chucks. I'm going to keep an eye on the time, guys, so we will get to centres, don't worry, but this is good. I want to talk about all these jaws that I've got out here as well. Get rid of some. So what you'll see is the chucks behind me are my at the moment my favourite jaws on. The ones I'm using currently. Say for instance I'm doing a run of bowls, then I'll have a certain range on. I'm doing a run of smokers, I'll have another range on, and so on. Alright to me, Vic? So let's just pop this chuck on the lathe a minute. Now this has got the C jaws on. Okay. Alright, so you're going to come in, Vic. Alright, keep that. Okay.
I can't.
There we go. So we're going to look at the C jaws. Okay, so this is my regular everyday chuck. So all I'm going to do is unwind these. Now there's a difference between what we used to do and what we're currently making. Now we identified the fact that some people aren't keen on having jaws that just come all the way out. Okay, so these now stop at that point. If you don't want that to happen, you will find when you take these jaws off, there's a little screw. Okay, take that screw out if you don't want that to happen. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean by that not happening. I can't unscrew that anymore. It's hit my spindle lock. Okay, some people, rather than taking these off and replacing the jaws by unscrewing here, like to keep them mounted to the accessory jaw, unscrew them, take them off, next set, like I do. I can't do that with these in their current position. So what we do is unscrew the little screw in there, and then it becomes easy to remove. Let me show you a chuck that doesn't have that feature, and all the new chucks, by the way, will have that feature. So here's one of my older chucks. I'm going to unscrew the jaws off of this one, and then Chris, I'm going to put these back in again, just to show you. So look, you can see they're coming all the way out, and I have the ability to be able to do that, pick up another set of jaws and tighten them back in again. All right, now for me, that's my preference. I prefer working like that. some people don't. They want the security to know that they can't unwind it too far. Now, I think what you were talking about then, Chris, is how do we then reattach those jaws to that chuck and get them in the right order? Because if you just put these chucks in willy-nilly, they're never going to mount up. They're never going to join up together. They're going to be all over the place. Because if you think about it, if I show you the inside of the chuck, you think about it. So inside there, can you just make out there's a scroll? If I turn the key, you'll see that moving part. That's a little spiral, what we refer to as a scroll. All of these chucks are scroll chucks. Like that scroll, in turn, meshes onto the teeth on that jaw. Okay, these teeth here. To do that nice and accurately, we need to have number 1 jaw, okay, going in to a certain point. To catch number 1 jaw up, number 2 has to go in a little bit further as you wind it on. So what you'll find is number 1 jaw has quite a small gap in the front tooth. Number 4 jaw has a large gap to catch the previous ones up. Okay, and each jaw progressively has to do that. Now, to help you with that, they're all numbered. So the mounting jaws are numbered right here. Can you see that bit?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the top jaws are numbered on the front face. Okay, so line those up to start with. The way they fit in, you've got a little male and female register point here. Okay, so male on the jaw, and the mounting jaw, and female on the profile jaw. They then butt on, and then you've got the 2 screws. So let's put these in order. To line up with the chuck, we've got the chuck numbered as well. So if we get all these numbers together, you should be right. Okay, so you can see the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now let's try. First time, I'll get my jaws lined up. So number 1, number 2, 3 and 4. And so what I'm going to do is line number 1. So this is number 1 slot. This is number 1 slot. And I'm just going to wind the scroll around until I find or see the start, okay, in here of the scroll. And I'm just going to wind that back so it's not in sight. Put number 1 jaw in, advance it on, a little bit of pressure, make sure it's gripped, and look for the start of it again now on slot number 2. So that's now firm. Number 2. Number 3. Checking each one each time. And then finally number 4. So they've all grabbed. Now I can wind them up. And we know that they're all going to mesh and be nice and accurate together. Now online on a website under the chucks, you'll see a video of that explained. Jason Breach is a video explaining jaws and explaining what we've just done there as well. So go online and have a look at that. But there we go. That was how you do that. Yes.
Dave asked, what are you slotting the chucks into to store them behind you?
That's one of my little questions that I've got up here. I was going to talk about storage. So these are extras. Where are we? Our jaw racks. Jaw racks. They're available in 2 sizes. So this size and a double jaw rack. I've got the part numbers for you here. Lily's going to be putting these up. So jaw racks 104699 is the single one that I have here. They're now coming in grey, new colours. And then the double jaw rack is 105724. I mean, it just means that they're up, they're on the wall, they're out of the way, they're there in plain sight. And I've learned since doing videos, and long before we've done this series, and magazine articles, that if you have everything in its place, it's very difficult to make untidy. So put everything back in its place every time. The workshop stays nice and crisp and tidy. So those are the jaw racks, 2 sizes, and then chuck hubs. So again, you've got to suit your thread size, but the chuck hubs 702217 again gets everything up off the wall, means that they're not shoved in a cupboard or out the way, and then you start losing things, you know. So they're always there. There we are, Dave. All right, Vic, for the minute. I'm just going to take a big swig of coffee because there's a lot of talk in there. Right. Oh, one more. Go for it.
Chris has come back to us. I mean, not having to buy a new chuck for each mount and or needing accessory jaws for quick mount changeovers.
So you just, oh, okay, right. Yes. So if you had, I'll swap a set of jaws over. So I've got another set of C jaws here. Okay, so I've just bought my set of C jaws. Okay, we're going to fit them to our mounting jaws. Okay, I'll do this nice and quickly. I set up for my drill. I probably can't find it now. I've set up for my drill a cut off little Allen key. And that Allen key goes in my cordless drill, and I can quickly undo the jaws. I can't put my finger on it right at the moment, so we won't use that one. However, you probably won't. Anyway, can they see that, Vic? All right.
Yep.
What I'd like, Vic, in fact, let's get. Excuse me. I'm just going to move you around a second, everybody. Get rid of that one because we're not going to use that. Give you a better view there. You're right on the action. Vic can't see what you're saying, by the way, so I've gone a little bit too high for Vicky. So what we're going to do, for instance, I want to change from my gripper jaw to a C jaw. So what we're going to do, let's just nip them off. Keep asking questions while I'm doing this. This is going to take me 2 or 3 minutes.
We've got a question from Gerald. When watching pros demo, they often comment about using every chuck key hole to tighten up the workpiece. Why is this when each key position turns the same coil that closes the jaws? That's
a good question. I'll show you that. I'll demonstrate that in a moment, and I'll show you the difference between 2 chucks and why one is necessary to do that and one isn't. So we'll take a chuck apart and show you.
Question from Keith. Hi Colin, I have a record power 1 HP lathe. Will it be able to handle the 114 chuck, please?
1 horsepower, yeah, you should be able to. Shouldn't be a problem. I'm guessing you've got a 3/4 16 thread on that one. Most of the records, apart from the Maxis, do. So yeah, you should be okay. Actually, a 1 horsepower machine, I'd be happy with that. I worry more about the you know, the physical size of what you're going to put on the lathe. That's the only thing that would concern me more, because you've got a big chuck that can handle big things. Can the lathe handle what the chuck can hold? All right, so with all of those off, and just cutting one of these little guys off, holding that in a cordless drill saves you a massive amount of time. Just take the torque setting right down on your cordless drill. That's the only thing I would say. Right, go on, Vic. Yeah.
From Rustic, can you talk about Colette chucks if you have time, please?
Yeah, sure. I'll be honest, I don't have many Colette chucks. There's the Junior, of course, but I don't have that many. The old Multi-Stars, the original wood turning chucks, they used to be Colette chucks or little cone chucks, but I don't really have that many. That one's there. So what we're going to do, look, 1 jaw goes onto there. That's 4, that's right. And what we're doing, look, you can see that little recess that fits over that ridge. You can, yeah, you can take it down if you want to, a bit. Wind it down a little bit. It will drop suddenly if you want to do that. All right, and adjust the suit, as long as everyone can see what's happening.
It's better.
You can see the questions now. Right, so all I'm going to do is just finger tight, screw these back on. Not tightening anything up too tight at the moment. I want these to mesh in evenly.
A good tip from Bill, this is where the small magnetic dish comes in handy to save losing the screws in the shavings on the floor when you drop them.
They're too right. I've done that too many times, Bill. So there we are, last two. Yeah, what I was saying about the cordless drill, just be careful, you know, you'll end up stripping threads if you're not careful. So take that torque setting all the way down. There we go. So before I tighten them up, what I'm going to do, there we are, Bill, what did you say? Just drop my key on the floor. What I'm going to do is just tighten up those jaws together so they mesh in nice and neatly. Now I can finish off tightening those screws up, and that meshes them in really, really nice. If you've got a nice bit of steel that you can bite onto, a round piece of bar, then even better. There we are, and we're all good. We've got our new set mounted. Hope that helps, Chris or Dave. Can't remember what else.
Question from Andrew. Axminster Tool and Machinery, the smaller size chuck hub seems to have disappeared. Is that gone forever, or will it be back into stock under the wood turning brand?
Chuck hub, smaller size, was that an 1/8 or was that a 3/4 16? So I must admit, I checked this morning and I could only see a 33mm myself. 33mm is the only one listed. I'm guessing that they are gone, I'm afraid to say. But Lily, you might be able to put me right on that one. If you can find it, could you put it up on screen, please? So we were looking, we had two questions then, didn't we? I wanted to take a chuck apart to show you what happens on the inside and to explain why we use each key position when tightening up. So let's just take the plate off first. Just to keep plate, this one. This is my old chuck, so ignore the black. We don't use this process anymore. Blacking was not that great environmentally, so we've gone away from that now. It also meant we had to send chucks away to be for another process to happen, so that was an issue with stocking then as well. Now they come straight off the lathe and we go straight into our packaging and then straight onto the shelves, and they're all stainless steel. Remember, that whole body now is stainless steel. There we are, those are the pinions. Now I'm going to get horrible and dirty when I do this. Those pinions, little keep pin, now come out. The graphite grease is dirty. Come on, come out. Alright, there's the graphite grease. That's what makes these chucks run so sweetly. I'm sure the designers and the engineers will disagree with me there. They will say, no, it's the accuracy and all their hard work. But no, it's everything coupled together, of course. But no, that's, if you think about turning a chuck key, put that one back in its relevant position and wipe my hands off. If you think about turning a chuck key, think about those splines on the pinion and in turn on the back of the scroll. If I turn the key where I think is tight, or what feels tight. Okay, so let's go all the way close just to prove a point here. If I turn it to that point there, I might be fully in one notch on that pinion. I might just be able to gain a little bit more leverage on that pinion, and then I might be able to gain a little bit more leverage on that pinion. So by doing it separately, a little bit of a tweak on each one, you do get a slightly better grip. Go on, Vic.
Question from Andy. Whilst you have the back off, could you cover lubrication and cleaning, please? Yeah,
so again, completely open with you. I very rarely take the back covers off these chucks. The only time I do is to explain to people what's inside. That graphite grease is such a gooey grease that the centrifugal forces don't tend to throw it out. Saying that, I did have Jim a few weeks ago saying that he's got one, he's had it for about a year and it's still throwing grease out.
That's a rarity. I don't see that very often. It might have been a little bit too much grease put in at the time, but I'm not sure. But this stuff, I don't get grease coming out of me. You can see the amount of chucks I've got here. I just don't get it happen. Graphite grease is what's used, and in my opinion, probably the better one to go for. And in terms of maintenance, there's just nothing really that that I do to them. Once I've got them, I just use them, and that's their life. I've never taken a chuck apart and greased it, and I've been using chucks for years. Right, let's pop the back on. Now, so that's that one. Now, let me just show you the back of an SK100. So an SK100 is slightly different. There's the back of my old SK100. Again, not blacked anymore.
Hold it down.
Okay, so this is the back of that one. Now, that section of the scroll is exposed on the 100, hence the key being different. Now, if you took that key, that's actually that pinion, okay? And if I offer that key up to the chuck, you can see where the similarities are. But there'll be no point in me taking that key out of there, going over to this position. I'm still only moving the same scroll. It's not like I have 3 different positions or 3 separate keys. So on that, yes, it's going to gain you a little. On this one, no, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference. Okay.
Graham asks, can you use the chuck without the accessory drawers?
No, without the accessory drawers, there is no means of attaching any other jaw to them. No, actually, I lie. That's wrong. Yes, there is a means to holding 2 jaws in particular. Those jaws that I'm talking about, Lily, could you put up part number 717476, internal, external safety jaws. And you all know what they are because I use them every single session. These are the jaws. Now they are a solid jaw, they have their own teeth on, so they will go in without the need for the mounting jaws. Every other jaw we do, and there's over 30, will require a set of mounting jaws. And that applies to all of the chucks that we do, that we make.
A question from John. He missed the beginning. Have the 8350 lathe and a 114 chuck. Want a second chuck. Don't know whether to get another 114 or the 100. Any thoughts?
I would stick to the 114. Yeah, I would definitely say this is just my favourite chuck. Nothing against the 100, but if you can, why not go to the bigger chuck? You can then, you know, sort of swap between each chuck easily. The chuck key are the same, so you're not having to sort of swap between different chuck keys. Keep it the same. Personally, that's exactly what I would do.
Ian asks, hi, will the jaws you are using fit onto a Supernova chuck?
No. No, so it's like car manufacturers. We make parts that we think are best. Nova do parts they think are the best, and so on. So we all come up with our own sizes, best fit, all those sorts of things. Obviously ours is the best, but every manufacturer and every company is the same. We make these at Axminster. We have a lot of thought. We have meetings to decide on the best fit, what would work the better. That's a meeting with the wood turners themselves, the engineers themselves, designers, and we come up with what you see. So we don't look at any other company. We do what we think is best. The only things we have to be similar on is, or the same as, is thread sizes. Things that are common to lathes, you know. So people might be putting our chucks on another manufacturer's lathe. That has to work, so we all get that. Let's just have a look at thread sizes whilst we're going. So, alright, so threads on lathe. Now this is a metric thread, this one. This is a 33mm thread by 3.5 between pitch. So to break that down and make that easy to understand, 33mm across its face, 3.5mm between peaks on the thread. Okay, metric threads are measured in that way. They may not be the same size, but they're measured in that way. Imperial threads are measured slightly differently. They're still measured across the face, but then they're measured in threads per inch. So an inch 8, for instance, would mean that it's an inch across, 8 threads per inch. Or 3/4 16, 3/4 across, 16 threads per inch. So you can see how they would be, they're very similar, but just that threads per inch is slightly different. So that's those. One other thing, we're going to move on to centers now. Morse tapers. Morse tapers are the taper, and I'm just going to grab a center to show you what a taper is here. So here's our taper on a live center. This is a very, very fine taper. Morse tapers that vary a little bit between about 1.5 degrees to 3 degrees. So it's a very fine taper to give you a lot of grip. You know, we don't want them twisting in the Morse taper themselves, otherwise you're going to burr over the inside of your taper here. Now, Morse tapers vary from 1 to 3. More commonly now it's 1 and 2, and more commonly now it's becoming 2s generally are the way people are going. Now, yeah, back to me a little bit. So just bring the camera back. I just want to break down a few centers before we carry on. Guys, if you've still got questions on chucks, keep them coming. But I'm just going to throw out a few centers for you. So first of all, I'm going to break down the differences between drive centers and live tailstock centers. I think most of you will understand that in a tailstock we have a bearing center, something that runs with the timber. And in the headstock you have a drive, something that transfers the power from the motor, from the belts and the pulleys to the workpiece. So for that reason you can't have a bearing on the headstock end. Okay, it sounds obvious, but only if you've discovered that with yourselves. So tailstock centers vary greatly. I've got just a few there. So it's my Evolution tailstock center. That's the biggest one. That's the one I use for some of the bigger hollow forms. Okay, this is the same center as that one, but with the top cone taken off. Now, if you're doing large pieces and you're driving them between centers to start with, they may be soft, wet in a lot of cases. You'll want something with a much bigger cone, just in a bit closer, Vic. Just bring the whole thing a bit closer. That's it. Okay, so you want something like that. It's got a nice big ring on it, so that's going to give you lots of purchase. I would use that over a single pointed center. Okay, on big pieces. Single pointed center is fantastic for general turning, but not great for bigger pieces. It's not as secure. You're going up to a ring center from a single point, then you're going up to something like that, okay, for an even bigger cone. And then my favourite, if you're doing hollow forms, wet turning, is this little baby in here. And this is a beautiful little centre, this one. You see me use Pro drives an awful lot in the headstock. Well, this is the live version of the Pro drive. And look how much bigger that is. It's on a bearing, so this rotates. It's got the splines, the same as our Pro drive. So the centre that I'm using to drive most of my work between centres, and they match up perfectly. So you can swap the piece around as well. So two versions of the same profile. One's a tailstock live centre and one's an actual drive centre. And that's great for those bigger pieces, those wet pieces. Part number on that one, as that really is a good little centre. 106540. Lily, I believe you've got that. That's the last one that I gave you. So if you pop that one up on screen. But that one would go tailstock and the drive centre itself go in there. No, don't worry. Don't worry. So yeah, tailstock, headstock. That takes us on to drive centres. Go on, Vic, you got a question?
Question from Glyn. You mentioned T3AR. Is this in a kit?
Lily, could you have a look and see if the T38R is in one of the new packages, please? Lily's just going to find out for you a second. I'm just going to grab a few drive centres. They, again, so many different types of drive centre.
we're going from things like traditional 2-prong and 4-prong drives. So 4-prong, jumbo 4-prong. And it's as simple as the bigger the project, the bigger the drive will go. If you've got a piece of timber or a natural edge, something that isn't flat, then a 4-prong won't work. You need a 2-prong. Is it?
Sorry, I've got lots of questions.
Go for it.
Dave has ordered a trade 406. Which centres would recommend for?
The trade 406 will come automatically with a 4-prong drive and the single pointed tailstock centre. My guess, with a machine of that size, you're going to be doing some big stuff. I would definitely go for the Pro Drive and the Pro Drive, both 21mm. I would go for those two, then driving between centres. If you're going to do big stuff, then maybe the Live Pro and a Jumbo drive. They would be my recommendations for big things. But that little Live Pro that I keep whittling on about is probably one of my favourite tailstock centres at the moment. It you know, it's no good on small stuff, but for if you're doing hollow forms, big pops, that sort of stuff, then it's a must really. Drive centres, Pro drives. So 4-prong drives, we've then evolved into Pro drives, 21mm, 16mm. There's 2 different sizes. Don't forget the Morse Tapers, different sizes. Other drive centres that you may not assume would be a drive centre. That's that ring friction drive. So they're matched with your tailstock, a little bit like the Pro drives are, but ring centres, matched pair of ring centres. Friction drive, safety drive's another name for those. Great for the smaller pieces. Toadstools, little crafty pieces, they're fantastic. And the good thing with those, if you're learning to use a skew, put one of those in, because if you get a catch, everything stops, but the drive can continue moving. Yes, Vic?
Question from Rustic Woody. I know you've covered this before, but could you explain again how to arrive at the optimum diameter tenon for a specific jaw set?
Yeah. So if you're the basic way of doing it would be 6mm between your jaws. 6mm between your jaws, roughly pencil width. Close the jaw to that 6mm gap. Then you can measure. The other way, very neat invention by Chris Fisher, is the speed sizer. And if you're on a bowl blank, what we have here, internal and external, okay, internal, external measurements there, and from centre to the desired hole. So let me come around to do this a bit better. So internal, external. Then you'll see the letters B, D, DB, BC. So if I wanted to do an external measurement on my bowl for a foot, for instance, for the C jaws, I do that. That's half the diameter. So then I can scribe onto the bottom of my bowl blank, and that will make it dead right. Now this is one of the smarter uses of that speed sizer. You can use it to scribe as well, use it as a compass, you know, a little bradawl in the middle and a pencil in the desired hole, so that'll give you something before you start on the lathe. But I find just the ability to do that a very quick indicator of that size, and I can mark or scribe straight away onto the bowl as it's spinning. So I like that version. But basically, if you don't have one of those, then pencil between and measure. Okay.
A question from Keith. Are Axminster going to do inserts so you can use on different lathes?
No. So you would have to go for the thread size to suit your machine. I think there's one insert, but like I said, I'm not, or not insert, they're an adapter. I'm not massively keen on adapters. Adapters put so much error because of all those machine faces coming together. I personally just wouldn't go down that route. So we do one adapter, which is 1 inch 8 to 3/4 16. So it's for the smaller chucks and smaller lathes. So yeah, there's one out there. Okay. Just briefly, we're running out of time, guys. It's such a big subject. Go and ask questions, Vic.
Sorry. Do you only do the one size of live Pro Drive centres?
Pro Drive centres come in two sizes. They come in a 16mm and they'll come in a 21mm. Okay. One thing I haven't mentioned about a Pro Drive actually, and the same with a Live, take that grub screw out the back, and inside there you've got an adjuster grub screw. So the harder I tighten that up, the more pressure putting on the spring there, the harder the sprung point is here. So that's a sprung point. So you can give that extra tension or slacken the tension off. These are great for production, showing these Pro Drives. I would always couple it up with one of those though, one of those tailstop Live Pro Drives. But they're really, really useful. I probably 80% of my work, well, I would say 90% of my spindle work is done with a Pro. If the only time I wouldn't do that is if the size of the project wouldn't allow me, if it's too small, for instance. Yep.
Question from James. I have a record power DML36SH cam lathe with 3/4 × 16 TPI.
Yeah.
Will it be able to handle the 114 chuck, or would I be better going for the 100 chuck?
What was it? Let me just see that lathe again. So just a record power. I think you'll be right with the 114. If I'm honest, the only reservation I have when we talk about 114 on that machine would be the thread size. I'm just a bit nervous about the size of that. It's a 3/4 thread size. That would be the thing that would worry me more than the actual lathe mechanics themselves. I've used them on them before and they're absolutely fine. Just be careful when you're threading on. It's a much finer thread. Okay, so I just be a little bit more careful with that. But yeah, I think you'll be fine. The motor will cope with it, the belt will cope with it. That's the most important thing. Yes.
Dave asks, can you show a typical example of a head and tailstock drive in place for a medium piece of work?
Yes, I will. What's the time on my phone, Vic? Or time on your watch?
It's nearly 5.
Right, we're going to have to stop in a minute, guys. I'm really, really sorry. We will pick this up later. Yeah, just very, very quickly. So my Pro Drive. Get rid of all these things here. It's as simple as that. Whenever you're checking, goodness me, I've got a lot of tidying up to do. Whenever you're checking, if you've been moving that headstock around, you've been drilling on the lathe, that sort of stuff, or turning, doing some bowl turning, get your head and your tailstock up together. Check that your points are going to match together. Make sure that everything's nice and lined up. It's called the KISS test. Then you can come back and then you're away to go. Now for me, those two centers, my Pro Drive, my tailstock Pro Drive, that would be the best setup that I could use if I'm rough turning out one of these bad boys here. That could go between there. We know that we're safe, we're confident that nothing's going to go. Rough it out, create your hold point for your chuck, hollow the guy out, and then do what I've done here, put them on the shelf, let them dry out, and then you can finish hollowing. Alright, now I know there's loads and loads of questions. I'm going to get to them. I'll answer, Lily always sends me the unanswered questions, and we'll get back to you. So I'm going to have to say, thank you ever so much for giving me so much content. Well, I'm going to have to go. We're running into that hour. It's quite important that we finish just before the hour's up. So, join me again on Thursday. Thursday is going to be all about wood turning tools. We're going to look at beginner sets and advanced sets. So until Thursday, guys, join me again in my workshop, 4 o'clock, same time, same place. I've been Colwin. Thank you very much. And I'll see you Thursday. Bye-bye. See ya.